We could never do these things. Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast, brought to you by Home Instead of Tallahassee, Ascension Sports, and the Mowry Law Firm in St. Augustine, Florida. First of all, welcome to the show, guys. We have a very special guest today. We've got Charles Fishbein, founder and CEO of Elite Scouting Services. And so I don't think we could have a better guy on the show to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about Miami and Florida State, and Fish, because of what he does, probably has more knowledge of the rosters and the schools in the state of Florida. There's probably nobody better than Fish. So, Fish, welcome to the show, man. You're our second guest.
Thanks, man. I feel privileged.
Yeah, and I want to apologize ahead of time, or for Shane. We're going to start taping us trying to get ready for this show because it's priceless every day. Shane, who is the most technical out of both of us from a computer standpoint,
very low bar. Low bar.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But Fish, what's going on? I know you're coaching high school ball. Tell everybody about what Elite. Because you're probably going to get a lot of coaches that watch this show, Fish, because it's so football centric. But tell people what Elite Scouting Services does. What you do for people that are new to it.
For the past 20 plus years, we've been going out to high schools, and actually we're extensions of the college staff. That's what I say. We go out and scout the players and kind of build out relationships with the high school coaches and do evaluations, which we sell to the universities. So they're able to get onto players earlier than usually the public. We get them on those players when they're ninth graders, 10th graders, when nobody really knows about them. And they're able to it's all about getting on these players earlier and earlier now so you can recruit them and get an advantage of those relationships.
Yeah, so Fish has got a lot of insight. He knows college coaches throughout the country, similar to Shane and I. And so we hope to have Fish on as a regular guest because of his wealth of knowledge and the fact that we have been working together for the last 5 years. And he's been a constant on our what used to be the Osceola's post-game show, and we'll do some of that during the weekends about college football as a whole, not necessarily Florida State. But we do want to have Fish on. We got some questions about University of Miami headed into 2025, and simply because Fish and I have worked together covering Florida State for the last 5 years, going to get a little bit into Florida State heading into 2025 because he is a very busy man. In addition to running Elite Scouting Services, he's also coaching high school football this year, coaching his son. Hey, Fish, how is the coaching going, man? And how are you and your son getting along?
I don't talk to him during practice at all, even though I'm kind of like involved with the offense. I kind of let him do his thing. And I'll coach all the other players. But, for the longest time, he thought I was an idiot, like most people. But then he realized a lot of the stuff I was teaching, he's learning that stuff now. Like, hey, you know what? You were right. They're teaching me the same thing. So that's how it is being a father-son relationship in coaching, I guess.
Yeah, Shane probably wishes his father had not talked to him when he was playing for linebacker for him at South Carolina. So if you need any advice, call Shane. He'll have some words of wisdom. All right, so let's hop into it. We're going to talk a little bit about the Miami Hurricanes 2025. We're going to talk a little bit about recruiting the state of Miami, as it used to be called, I think, by Howard Schnellenberger, talking about the I-4 corridor all the way down south to even Key West. But, Shane, I'm going to let you start. Mario Cristobal is entering year 4 at Miami, coming off one of their most successful years in recent memory last year. He's 22-16 as the Hurricanes head coach. They are a preseason top 10 program, but certainly not as much fanfare around this program this year as there was last year. So I'll let you start the questions for Fish. You're muted, Shane.
I don't put a whole lot of stock in those preseason rankings. When you go back the last 20, 25 years, I bet you can find Miami in a very similar spot based on brand name and what have you. But I'll say this. The line of scrimmage has changed dramatically to me since Mario's been there. Did a great job at quarterback with the transfers and certainly other spots. But the line of scrimmage to me, just coaching against them, watching that roster build out year over year, that's where I think they're special. I know they graduated a bunch at receiver, quarterback, so on and so forth. But I feel like they return most of their line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball with impact players. So I'm excited just because if you're good up front, you're good everywhere.
Yep.
Fish, what do you think about this team? You know, it is they have to replace 5 receivers on offense. They've got to replace 2 of their starting offensive linemen, but they seem to have done that well based on everything you read and hear. The front is going to be the strength of both sides of the football for this team. But what are your expectations? New defensive coordinator, 4-2-5 scheme going away from what they played last year. You do have Carson Beck transferring from Georgia, as Shane has alluded to. Just kind of you're as close to the Miami program as anyone I know. Just kind of give us your overall thoughts so we can kind of break it down into position groups and sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think Miami's offensive line may be one of the best in college football this year. That's where games are won and lost. The loss of the quarterback is huge, but I think this team's going to be a little different. I think Mario's going to go back to the Alabama kind of Saban roots of how to build a team inside out. They're going to be more of a power run team this year. I think they put a lot of stress on their defense last year, even though it was a bad defense. But sometimes you score too quickly. It's kind of silly to say, but they scored so quickly that their defense was just always on the field. They did a lot. I think Mario wants to slow the game down a little bit, be more game manager with Carson Beck. But their O-line, they got to just run the ball. I mean, you look at Markel Bell. This kid's 6'9", 350. He's a monster of a man on the outside, and then they have Malaluga at the other tackle spot. They got a lot of experience. Anez Cooper, who's a guard, he's a 4-year starter. They got a lot of game experience up front, and that's where he's going to lean on. They got 2 very good backs in Fletcher and Jordan Lyles. So I think offensively they'll be more balanced. They improved their defense, especially on the back end, but offensive line, they could set the tempo, especially if you look, I don't think they leave the state of Florida for like the first 2 months. So they're going to be in a lot of hot and sticky environments in Florida where you're going to want to wear teams down. I think they're going to lean on that offensive line.
And I'll say, when you go back to skill people at Miami over the years, that's never been an issue.
No.
I feel like, you may not know their name, Restrepo, They got really talented players in the backfield on the edge at tight end over the years that I've watched them on tape, coached against them. So that's why I agree with Fish. When you're good up front like they are, and they're not just good, I think they're better than most, I think you can lean on them. And then you got a quarterback like Carson. He's been in a pro-style offense. They've been under center. They've been in the gun. I think it's a pretty easy transition for him at what they're asking him to do.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. So I think the big question on offense for them is wide receiver. They lost their top 5 guys that would have had a chance to, either the graduation or transfer portal. Fish, who sticks out to you at receiver? I mean, they've got a couple of highly recruited guys. Trader stands out. Carr stands out. Obviously, Malachi Tony, Chance Rob. I mean, all these names were highly recruited.
When Trader came out, I mean, he wasn't at Jeremiah Smith's level, but he was a step behind him. I mean, Jeremiah Smith is one of these generational type of players that came out of down here. But, Trader was very, very good. Florida State wanted him. Other schools around the country wanted him. He just wasn't to that same – he's a smaller version of him. I think he's going to be a guy he showed in the bowl game last year that when he had the chance to step up, he played very well. I think they're going to be a little more better at receiver as a group just because I think they were so much Restrepo-centric that that's all they ever seem to do is kind of force him the ball. I think they'll spread the ball out a little more. Maybe they don't have that one guy, but they'll rely on multiple guys. C.J. Daniels, the kid they brought in from LSU, I think 2 years ago, he had over 1,000 yards. He had 10 touchdowns, so he was a productive player in the SEC. So they've got some guys that have produced already at the college level.
Yeah, obviously they got to replace the running back that went pro. It looks like Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. Obviously the kid last year, and his name escapes me for some reason. I know you know who I'm talking about. The big old kid,
Damian Martinez.
Yeah, Damian Martinez. Do you see that more running back by committee for the Hurricanes? And is there anybody behind those two, Fletcher and Lyle, that you expect to?
They brought a guy in from like North Dakota State, a kid that was super productive that will get some reps. I mean, it's going to be Jordan and Fletcher. The third guy potentially could be Elijah Lofton. He's a tight end for Miami, but I've seen them in practice put him in the backfield. He's probably the most physically gifted player on their offense. He's a guy that, because they had Arroyo was a tight end last year. He was under the radar, but I think Elijah Lofton's a guy that's going to really surprise people this year.
All right. Shane, any questions about the offense or comments about Miami's offense?
No. I think they'll have skilled kids that will surprise us, and you'll know their names by the end of the year.
Yeah, all right. So Miami's offense was number one in the country last year, not just in the ACC. The issue that really stopped Miami from making the college football playoff was its defense. They gave up 30-something points a game. They gave up 30 points a game five times in ACC play. Obviously that's got to change this year for them because the offense is not going to score as much based on what you guys are thinking. It's going to be more balanced, more run heavy, not as many explosive plays. They handed the reins of the defense over to Corey Hetherman from Minnesota, so they're going to a 4-2-5 defense. Only 4 starters return. They brought in 5 guys on the back end of the defense via the portal. Fish, how much ground do you think Miami needs to make up on defense, and how much ground do you think they've made up? Obviously, you saw them in the spring. Nobody's seen them in the fall yet, but what are your thoughts on Miami's defense heading into the 2025?
I think defensively, and you've seen it at Florida State, when you have athletes, you got to just not have them think so much. I think the prior defensive coordinator was a smart guy, but they thought too much. So one thing I noticed with this new coach, they were very aggressive in the spring. Guys were just flying to the ball. They're using their athleticism more. It reminded me of the old days of Miami, Florida State, where they just said, listen, we got these athletes, let them run. There wasn't a lot of thinking out there. These guys looked a lot more aggressive. The back end's just better because they were terrible in the back. They didn't have talent. I thought Mario's kind of processed the recruiting. Hey, listen, we need O-line, D-line. He kind of de-emphasized certain positions like DB. This year in the portal, they went out and got an Xavier Lucas, who most people down there feel like he's going to be a first-round pick. So they've upgraded the back end. They had the guys up front. Like I said, they built the O-line. They built the D-line. The last part of the building process was bringing in the defensive backs, which they brought in 6 or 7 portal guys. So if they find 2 or 3 guys to upgrade that, their back end was just downright terrible last year, guys missing assignments. Shane would be able to explain them more, whether it's more scheme or talent. I thought it was a lot of talent issues, but they did the scheme, I think, bringing in more of an aggressive style scheme, kind of like that Manny Diaz or one of these guys that likes to attack, get after people. I think you're going to see more of that. I think their defensive overall, the personnel is just better. And a lot of these guys like Ruben Bain, as talented as they are, they were freshmen. These guys have to grow up. And, that jump from year 1 to year 2 to year 2 to year 3 is a big deal in college football. People just expect, because these guys are so highly rated, they're supposed to come in year 1 and just dominate. It doesn't happen, especially up front.
Yeah, listen. Go ahead, Shane.
Well, I think what makes it special, again, they'll find the kids on the back end, whether it's through the portal, and they're weaponized enough to do that. Up front, you got Akeem Messador, David Blay, who came in from Louisiana Tech. Yeah. Certainly, you got Ruben Bain back. I think he's only going to be a junior. It seems like he's been there forever. ACC Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. So Leonard Taylor, to me, reminds me of the D-line room we had in 23 at Florida State. I think they can affect the game. These guys are a year older. Certainly their ability, if they turn them loose, let them create havoc. I think it's a game changer. Wesley Basaint, that stands behind him. Wesley's a great looking prospect. Been playing a lot of football for 2 years. Going to be a third-year player in their program. Long, tall, rangy, right in the middle of their defense. So I think it's just a unique group up front that's going to allow those guys. And then when you talk about letting them go play, Fish, I think you'll see the same thing up here in Tallahassee. You're going to see a lot more eyes back in the backfield. You got a chance to go recruit these large, great athletes. Let them go break. Let them use their instincts. Let's don't turn our back to the ball. Let's don't overthink things. I think you're right. You'll see that at both spots, Tallahassee and Miami.
I mean, Shane, the one thing is a friend of mine does a breakdown of all the college football teams, and I really never looked at this from the analytical standpoint, but like 2 years ago, he showed me Florida State, and he goes, this is why Florida State's going to be good. And the number of snaps per player on both sides of the ball was like twice as much, 3 times as much as Florida and Miami that year. And he goes, this is why they're going to be really good. Miami, the snaps up front between offensive line, defensive line, certain guys, they have a lot of snaps and experience. And that means something in college football. Even in this day and age of just plug and play, it still matters that you have guys that have reps. If you have a young team, it's just, you're going to have more mistakes. It's just the way it is.
Agreed.
All right. So, Shane, Fish may have already asked you the question, but what do you know about what Minnesota did on defense that Miami folks can look forward to seeing in that defense, or what obviously FSU fans can look forward to seeing, or maybe not look forward to seeing when they come to Tallahassee in October? But what does Corey Etherman do that's different than what they did last year on defense?
Well, I think I know a little bit about Minnesota. We got a corner up there, Zaquan Bryan, starting corner at Minnesota. So I had a chance to watch those guys last year, saw them play in their bowl game up in Charlotte. And you're going to see on defense, 4 down front. You mentioned that, 4-2-5. They're multiple. You're going to see quarters. They're going to play off quarters, true old school quarters. They're going to play a lot of press like we see at Florida State the last couple of years, match quarters. But they're going to be varied. You'll see cover 3. You're going to see multiple fronts up front. But I just think they do a good job mixing it up. When I watched them last year going into that bowl game, breaking them down, I just thought they were very multiple, which, again, we talked about tendencies last week. The more multiple you can be without, confusing your guys and letting them play with vision like we talked about in those coverages, the harder it is to scheme you up as an offense. So I just think they did a good job. And a lot of it was vision coverage, right? Again, quarters, true Tampa 2, where you have playing some squat corners, true vision cover 3, which I think carries well to the Miami skill set those guys have.
All right. Let's take a look at the schedule, guys. Miami has been picked either second, third, or fourth in most preseason media polls. And as we all know, after last year, if you're a Florida State person, preseason polls do not mean a thing. Shane's already alluded to it. But they're over-under in Vegas, which does mean something. For bettors, it's set at 9.5. And, of course, we've already given some people some great betting advice, being the professionals that we are, Shane. But listen, the schedule is home-friendly for sure, if not opponent-friendly. And I'm going to read the schedule just because we have people that listen to a podcast version of this. But they open up with Notre Dame at home, followed by home games against Bethune-Cookman, University of South Florida, then Florida at home. Then their first road game does not come until October at Florida State. Then Louisville at home, Stanford at home, then on the road at SMU, 2 home games against Syracuse and NC State next, then finish the season on the road with back-to-back games at Virginia Tech and at Pitt. Fish, is this a schedule that sets up for Mario Cristobal to make it to the ACC championship game this year? And can they make it to the college football playoff? Or, as one of our buddies has a question for you, Fish, do you think we will see a major setback, a major fall off at Miami this season? And that is, we do have a viewer subscriber question. So I'll let you take it away with that.
I think it comes down to the first month, the Notre Dame, Florida. Even if they split, both of those games are out of conference. So from that standpoint, Miami just has to get through that first month, and then they get into the second half of their schedule. I think the back end of their schedule is very favorable. Syracuse, I don't think it's going to be very good. Plus, they get them at home, NC State, Virginia Tech, Pitt. I think those are games that they should win. So the first month is going to be key. I think Notre Dame, coming down first game of the season, it's going to be super hot. They got a freshman quarterback. Those games are very sloppy. It's going to be a one-possession game. That's going to be 24-17, 27-24. I don't think that's going to be anything out of that. That's what what that game's going to look at. So I think Miami has a shot. They have to win the conference or be in the ACC conference, and they can make the playoffs. Two losses now don't kill you. The games, those it used to be that way. Hey, you have to win every game. It's not that way anymore. If Miami wins the conference or they get in the conference ACC championship game and they're either 1 or 2, they're probably in the playoffs. So, I mean, that's what they got to do. Mario's got to win the conference. And if they win one of those two big games, if they win both, they're a top 10 team right off the bat. But if they win one of those two, they're in good shape.
Shane, how do you break their chances at going to the playoffs down? I mean, it's, listen, like I said, home-friendly schedule, but certainly some tough opponents at home, particularly that first month.
Yeah, I agree. I think at SMU, it's not a true road environment, in my opinion. It's not a place where you're going to go and struggle. At Virginia Tech, depending on how they're playing, right? Lane Stadium.
Hey, put some respect on the ponies, buddy. You went to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm just talking about true environment on the road for a team to go operate in. At Pitt, same thing. NFL Stadium, half full. So when you look at their road games, Florida State, rivalry game, but certainly seems like they have a better roster than Florida State right now. So I look at Louisville as the game that could be tricky. They got them at home. It's after Florida State, So anyways, good team there with Braum and that crew, but I think it's favorable. I think it sets up well, and Vegas is usually pretty close.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to be I think they're going to be right around 9. I'd have Notre Dame as a favorite going into that game. I think whoever has the better game at quarterback against Florida will win that ball game. No shocker there. Then I think Louisville's sneaky. I think that could be a tough one for them. I really like Jeff Braum. I'm a fan of his as a coach. And listen, everybody continues to doubt SMU. And listen, it's sometimes, Shane, as you well know, going into a dead environment is almost worse than going into a very live, loud, it kind of lulls you to sleep. I know that when we used to go to Cincinnati when they weren't great on years, it kind of lulled us to sleep. And, we've seen Florida State have some off games at places like Wake Forest, which is, Snuggy Hill, and people taking naps on the side of the so anyway, we'll see what happens. And then listen, NC State, I think they could be a very interesting team late in the year. So I've got them all. I'm all over that 9 number, I think.
Well,
the only reason I bring up the stadium and road environment, I think about snap count and jumping in as a pass rusher. I think the ability to operate on offense and the ease. It's 32,000 people, so they can be as loud as they want to be. They can only be so loud and effective in so many ways.
I agree. Louisville, Braum's the best coach in the ACC, or one of them. What he does offensively and what he does, I really like him. It's just a lot. I think SMU was kind of that team that snuck up on people last year. I think people, once you have a year of film, I think Clemson and the playoffs kind of expose them a little bit. I think they have a lot of holes in that team. They were able to kind of work around, coach around. But once teams have a year of film, and I still think SMU up front isn't as good as a Miami, even a Florida State, Clemson. I think they could get exposed this year, where last year they kind of snuck up on people.
Yeah, I got a question for both of you. It's not really I know that going into Mario's 4th year, a lot of people are going to want to see them around the 10-win mark to sustain consistency with where this program is going. But I read a tweet yesterday where they were talking about if Alabama goes 9-3, could Kalen DeBoer be in trouble? And this is talking about Miami, but also talking about college football at large. When we went to super conferences, one of the things I said was, listen, people are going to have to readjust their expectations as fans and as members of the media. 9-3, if Alabama were to go 9-3, could very well get them into first place in the SEC, because they're killing each other week to week. Like, they're just eating each other up. The same thing can be said in the ACC. It's a deeper conference now. Some years it's deeper than others. All conferences go through that, where sometimes you've got 8 or 4 really good teams, a couple of great teams. Do people need to start, fans, media, because of these schedules, because of who these guys are playing, do they need to readjust their expectations in what a good season really is? Because we've, as the conferences have expanded, it's kind of gone to the NFL model, where you're moving more towards, you have a lot more parity, and you're moving. I'm not going to say it's a 500 league in the SEC, ACC. I think it's more of you're an 8-4 type average. But what do you guys think about expectations for Miami? And are fans still expecting too much from as far as a win-loss with the expansion of the conferences?
Fish, when's the last time Miami won the ACC?
I don't think they have, but I mean,
okay. So yeah, expectations are always unrealistic. I mean, most fan bases, and it's short for fanatic. I'm with you. I think you should be judged now. I think the judgment goes, did you make the playoff, right? And did you get in? I cannot believe, I can't believe it, but I cannot believe the powers that be at a place like Alabama in year 2, knowing what you're following, that you'd be in trouble going 9-3, like you said, on the verge of a playoff. But expectations at most places are unrealistic as long as your administration does not share those same unrealistic expectations of the fan base. As a coach, you're comfortable. Fish?
I thought when DeBoer took over, listen, he's taken over for a legend in Saban. He set a precedence that's never going to be duplicated in college football. Alabama fans better just understand that what he did will never be duplicated at that school or any other school. The top 10 finishes. And the way that college football is set up, I'm not saying you're going to see another Florida State situation, but I do think you're going to see teams with the swings. We've discussed this. You can't have roster turnover of 60, 70% every year. This isn't pro football teams don't have this much turnover. So I think you're going to see more situations where teams from year to year, the expectations are, this team's going to do this or that, and then they're going to fall off from that, and it's going to be a big drop. That's where I think fans have to adjust, is that year to year, every team is really different. I mean, you can't go, Florida State went 2-10 last year, they're going to go 2-10 this year. They're different teams. The personnel's different. The players are different. They brought in a bunch of different coaches. I just think college football, it's a new story every year, and that's how you have to be as a fan. Like, your expectations, we really won't know what most of these teams are about till about week 3 or 4. And then at that point, we could readjust our expectations for each team.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that too. I think when you look at a place like LSU, where they've won 3 national championships with 3 different coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miami, and I get it, it's been a long time, but I guess that is what builds up those expectations. When programs have success, regardless of who's in the pilot seat. But when you see a guy like Nick, just like you saw here, Bobby to Jimbo, and there's a slow fall off. These are some great programs, but you got to give credit to Nick and Bobby and some of the guys who led those programs and made them what they are. So I think there's going to be some fall off just because he's special, and not the Boer's not. It's just, it's different. And he's a special human.
I've always thought that with the going to Super Conference, particularly SEC, where you bring in Texas and Oklahoma, and then obviously the Big Ten, where you're bringing in Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA, you're moving. The parity's never been more. I think you have to adjust your expectations. All right, we have a lot we want to talk to Fish about. We're going to talk to him a little bit about recruiting the state of Miami. I want to get his thoughts on Florida State. We got a couple more subscriber questions, but I do want to take a second out to thank our sponsors. The Burnham Brothers podcast is brought to you by Ascension Sports, where athletes drive above the noise. Whether you're navigating NIL deals, building your personal brand, or preparing for the next level, Ascension Sports provides tailored consulting to help maximize every opportunity on and off the field. From recruiting insight to pre-draft prep and everything in between, learn more at ascensionsportsconsulting.com. That is ascensionsportsconsulting.com. And you can reach Shane Burnham, who is the football vice president or president of Ascension Sports. Shane, where can they reach you to get in contact with you and the Ascension Sports Group?
That was a quality read, by the way. I like that read in right there. It's at Shane Burnham 52. AscensionSportsConsulting.com is where you can find us. That was a hell of a read in. Who wrote that? That was awesome.
Well, I tell you what, it's an art to doing these reads, and I'm getting better every day. But I want to thank you for that great copy that you gave me to read. And so now I also want to thank home.
I knew that didn't come from Pat, man. I'm like, damn, shit, that should have been like 20 minutes long.
I'm trying to help my brother out, buddy. Trying to help him out. We also wanted to thank Home Instead of Tallahassee. At Home Instead, their adoptable care plans give you the confidence of personalized help that's with you throughout your day. Even when we know there are plenty of things you'll still want to fly solo on, like finishing your Sudoku, trying Aquazuma, or watching baseball, also known as hogging the remote, will provide companionship when you need it and space when you don't, all with a smile from qualified, compassionate caregivers matched to you. Visit Home Instead of Tallahassee online. Again, Home Instead of Tallahassee. We want to thank Scott and Todd Harrell for their sponsorship. Todd, of course, is a former pitcher at Florida State. And we also want to thank the Mowry Law Firm, headed by former FSU kicker Dan Mowry. They specialize in car and truck accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death cases. Dan's team of lawyers bring over 50 years of experience with them, and Dan and his team can be reached at 904-824-7799 or MowryLaw.com. Again, that's Mowry Law, 904-824-7799 or MowryLaw.com, and they are headquartered out of St. Augustine, Florida. We want to thank Dan and his group for their sponsorship. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Got my reads in, getting better, trying to know where to enunciate all the words. All right, so we want to get into a little bit about recruiting the state of Miami. Shane, I'm going to let you take that question away.
Fish, one of the biggest questions I had for you, again, I've subscribed to your service, Elite Scouting Services, forever as a coach, places I've coached, Iowa State, Rutgers. Nobody knows it better than you do. Nobody's had a better grasp on that for the last 25 years. And I always thought whoever ran the state of Miami, whether it was Miami, Florida State, Florida, Saban, Ohio State, people have had different runs in my mind where they controlled that turf and got the best players out annually. Is that still a thing? Portal, NIL, not as many kids signing out of high school, obviously. But I still, in my mind, still think if you run the state of Miami, you have a chance to have a great program. Is that still happening? Who's doing that?
I mean, Georgia was doing it for a while. I mean, you look this year, you could kind of say Texas is kind of taken over the top spot. They landed Diabell, who most people consider the top quarterback, not only in the state of Florida, but the country. And they also landed Derek Cooper, who's, I think, could be arguably the best player in the country. I mean, he could play on both sides of the ball. So you could sit there and say they landed 2 5-star kids, Texas did, and how will that translate? I'm biased toward players not only from down here, but the state of Florida. I think we produce the best talent, and not only from a talent standpoint from the top end, but the depth of the state. And if you could get a lot of those top players, especially from down here, I think you are going to win. You look at Ohio State with Jeremiah Smith. They got Brandon Innes, who's going to be a starter this year. They're starting Endis from Hollywood Chaminade High School. You just look. The top players are from down here. You look at even NC State. Their starting quarterback played with Jeremiah Smith and Josiah Trader. So whoever does land the most players from down here does seem to have an edge. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. And when it comes to the big four in the state of Florida, obviously Miami, that's their backyard. Florida over the years, in my mind, has never done quite as well as Florida State. That's just my memory of recruiting down there. And then when I was at UCF, different, we were a group of 5, but we made a living. Randy Shannon was on our staff, Corey Bell, some longtime Miami area guys. So we made a living out of Miami kids. We weren't fighting the same battles, obviously. How are the big four operating down there right now?
I mean, when you could go back to Jim Leavitt. Jim Leavitt made a living down here, and he built USF into what they were as a program. I think he got them into the top 5 while he was there, and they were considered like an elite, group of 4 program, group of 5 program. You look at Coach O'Leary did at UCF with Coach Dave Kelly. Dave Kelly came down here. He was one of these guys that recruited heavily. So when you look at every team's success, when they had the most success, they came down to South Florida. It wasn't coincidence. You look at even Florida got a lot of guys, even with Meyer, that they landed from down here when they Major Wright was one of the top players at St. Thomas, and he ended up going to Florida. So when you do well down here, I think there's no coincidence why these programs have success. When you start to wean away from the top players from down here, that's when you start to have issues as a program.
Do you feel like these 4 staffs I know Miami's making it a priority. They have no choice. Florida State, we talked about the guys going to Ohio State, some of the kids we've missed on. I was there. But Florida State, Florida, and UCF, I know they're down there recruiting. Are they having success in making that a priority in what they're doing?
Yeah, I think, Florida State this year, I think, has made it more of a priority. You look at the top 2 slot receivers and Brandon Bennett and Jason Lopez. Both of those guys are from down here. They try to recruit Derek Cooper. They lost out to Texas, but they're trying to spend time. I mean, Norvell comes down to the FAU camp, their camp, to try to get a jump on some of these players. It's not for lack of trying. I do think they put an emphasis. Florida's just different. I think they selectively recruit. I think, the city up in Tallahassee, mainly because you have FAMU. We've talked about that. I think that's a recruiting edge. I think that there's an adjustment for some of these kids that go to Gainesville. I think that's why you see Florida recruit different parts of the state more heavily. I think that's why they don't have as much of a footprint down here. But they do cherry pick the players that they feel that they can go after and do well. But UCF and USF have to recruit down here if they want to have success. I look at one of the players that UCF landed this year, KJ Baker, whose dad played at Florida State. He's a 10-200 meter kid. He fits what Scott Frost wants to do. And I think those are guys that you're going to see in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that they're like those teams' top players.
How would you rank the we go Big Four? I mean, you got four Power Four teams in the state now. How would you rank the 2026 classes right now as they stand? And of course, listen, we know what happens on the field is going to impact some of this. NIL negates a little bit of that. But what do you think? How do you feel about where these guys are? Miami, Florida State, Florida, and UCF from a commitment standpoint. Whose class do you like the best right now?
I think, Miami, it comes down to, I like their class because they continue to emphasize the offensive and defensive lines. They got like one of the top offensive tackles in the country committed. I believe that's where you win games. We've talked about this. Recruiting classes are kind of, I look at them differently. I'm more of if they're balanced from every position. If you have a hole at a certain position, I would downgrade a recruiting class. So the rankings are kind of different how I feel about it. I think Florida's class this year is really good, but they continue to have holes at certain positions, and that's a concern for me. Like Napier recruits really well at running back. They do a decent job on the old line. But there's certain positions they haven't done well. But I actually think this is Norvell's probably best class, or one of his best classes on paper. I think some of the guys that they've recruited, I looked at some of the guys on paper. I don't know what Shane thinks of someone like Tico Creedon. And I look at that.
I love that kid.
I watch his film, and I don't know if there's many better D-lock tackles in the country. Like, I really watched his film, how quickly he got off the ball. He played violent. He just plays violent. That's the first thing I noticed. And that's where the rankings, to me, don't make sense, because that's a guy that he's at the top of my board. And I do like I put down a few guys' names. I mean, Chauncey Kennan, the kid from Sarasota Booker, he's a shutdown corner. We talked about Florida State kind of has to recruit a little different with this staff and their resources. We talked about the money positions: quarterback, outside receiver, tackle, D tackle, D end, shutdown corner. They've got, for some reason, they do very well on the back end. I think Florida State with this staff recruits very well the defense. It's a backfield. I do like the D tackles with Tico, and I also like the other big D tackle they got from Georgia this year. The rankings kid. I like that they're bringing in more size. I think you look at the guys that Shane coached, whether it's Verse or those guys that they had. Every one of those guys were big. You need big guys up front and that are athletic. So I think they're all doing pretty well. None of them are doing elite recruiting this year. They're going to be fringe top 10, mainly top 15 classes. And as long as you're in that top 15 now, and you could fill in with the portal, I think you're right there to be a playoff team every year.
Yeah. This reminds me. Go ahead, Pat. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
This cycle for me, for probably Billy and for Mike, depending on what happens at the end of the year. But this cycle reminds me of after the 20 season or after the 21, where there was a struggle on the field. We were recruiting well because we were Florida State and well-resourced and a brand and all those things. And then we go into that season and we knew we had to win to keep that class alive. If you don't win big, I think we went 10-3, certainly helped that class and so on and so forth. But these commitments, I agree. I like the skill set on some of those D linemen they're taking out of there. Pat Surtain does a great job, I think, recruiting Miami and has a great reputation for developing kids and his son, all those things. But if you don't win, if Florida State does struggle, whatever happens at Florida State, but if they struggle on the field, it's just hard to keep these guys, even with NIL. I just think kids want to go and they don't want to hear the noise about what might happen in the staff change, or they want to go compete for national championships. So it'll be interesting to see how the season goes, and obviously if they can keep this class together.
Yeah.
No,
Go ahead, Fish.
No, winning changes everything. I mean, like, kids want to play for winners. Like you said, you could offer if it was just about money, then you know what, you'd have some teams that have a lot of money that would just be able to buy rosters. But I agree. I think they have to win on the field, and I think they are going to be a better football team this year.
Yeah, all right. I want to stay there because obviously you and I have talked a lot of Florida State football over the last 6 years, and we hope to have you on several times before the season starts. But since we got you on today, and we don't have to get deep in the weeds on it, but I do want to ask you what your expectations are for this FSU football team coming off a 2-10 season. Again, 45 new players brought in, about 20 of those through the portal. What are your expectations? 6 new full-time staff members and a lot of new off-the-field guys that were brought in with these coaches that came in. What are your expectations for Florida State a weekend of preseason camp and going into the 2025 season and a home opener against Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to get to that 8-9 win team this year. I think that I still believe Mike's a very good coach. I do not know what happened last year. Every week that we did a post-game thing, it became more like we had no answers. I think you had given up after about week 2. I was holding out to like week 4 or 5 where I just threw my hands up. But I do think he's got a better staff. I think that he's got guys that when things go wrong, if something goes wrong in a game from week to week, these guys have been there, done that there's not going to be that fall off that cliff this year, that if they do lose a game, it's not going to be devastating like it was last year. I do think that Mike's going to get back to what his strength is, running the football. That is where he's had his most success, how he got FSU out of the hole, is being able to run. I think Croma is going to be a first-team all-conference player. I think he was one of the best running backs. I think they're better on the O-line. We talked about it. They got a lot of guys that are new, but they have a lot of experience. These guys have reps in the SEC, so that's important. I just think that they're just better on both lines. I think the secondary is going to be good. I was never a fan of Adam Fuller as a defensive coordinator. I think that I don't think he was a bad X's and O's coach. I think he was just a bad fit, and his style of play did not fit what the Florida-type players are capable of doing. I think they're going to be a lot more aggressive on defense, kind of like we talked about Miami. I think the roster's better. They have to win, but I think they will. I think they'll win enough to keep the class together and keep Mike off the hot seat.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit of recruiting, a little bit of coaching question when it pertains to Florida State. Obviously, I think we all agree that the offensive staff has been upgraded with Malzahn and Herb Hand. I do want to talk to you a little bit about what I know you're familiar with Herb. He's recruited the state of Florida a long time. Gus's offense is what it is. We could talk about that if we want, but I think the most impactful hire coming into this season is Herb Hand. Talk about him as a coach, talk about him as a recruiter, because I do think they upgraded in both places with his addition.
Yeah, I think they went from a major weakness at a position as a coach to a major strength. I think Herb Hand is going to bring stability to that offensive line. I think he's probably simplifying a lot of the stuff that they're going to do. And the proof's in the pudding. He's done it everywhere he's been. Their offensive lines have always been pretty much a strength wherever he's gone. I think a lot of the stuff was, even though the talent level of Florida State on the line wasn't great last year, the coaching was even worse. It was a major weakness, and that's why you do not win if you're bad up front, and they were terrible up front.
All right, we have a subscriber question. This is from Bill. We've already kind of addressed one of his questions. With the NIL and portal, do we see the volatility from one year to another, the extremes, as something that is going to be more prevalent than it has before? I think you don't think so, Shane?
No, I think what you guys are going to see in this new NIL space with the rev share, you're going to see less volatility. What I mean is we all got our hands around it as coaching staffs. whether it's the way these contracts are structured, and that's a whole nother show, but a lot of these new rev share contracts they're trying to put kids on through next June. They're going to change the portal window to once a year. I really think what they did in a very smart way in college football, they've got the tiger by the tail as much as you can without having a true CBA in place. So I think we'll see less volatility. If you're a really good player, they're going to pay to keep you, and that's going to be retention will be more and more the name of the game for most schools. So I think you'll see less volatility.
Yeah, I saw where Kenny Dillingham said the other day, recruiting is dead. It's roster retention that's keying right now in college football. So Kenny Dillingham, who continues to impress me, we're going to talk about him one day on the show. Fish, I want to ask both you and Shane. This is Bill's second question. Also, if FSU only wins one of the Alabama, Florida, Miami, and Clemson games this year, if they were to win one, only could win one of those, which one is most important for Mike to win? It's a good question because they're at least going into the season, they'll be underdogs in all of them. We'll see what happens as they get further into this season and what Miami looks like and what Florida looks like. But what do you guys think? If Florida State could only win one of those games, which would be the most beneficial to the program and Mike Norvell?
You want to go, Shane, or
take it, Fish?
I think Florida. Just growing up, it always seemed like Miami, Florida State. While the fans hated each other, there was a mutual respect because they played each other. The players played each other. I think the game. It's just one of those things. It always seemed like the pressure was you have to win the Florida game to keep the fans off of you. Clemson's one of those teams. They're not, while they're a rival, they're out of state. And at the end of the day, Alabama's Alabama. Win or lose, I don't really think that game has as much of an impact. I think winning the Florida game basically can get you off the hot seat if there is a hot seat and save you as a coach. I just think that's the one game you can't lose if you're a Florida State coach.
Shane, what do you got?
I'm going to second that. Ditto, as my man Rush Limbaugh would have said. No doubt, you got the fan base that hates him. If you can only win one, win that one. And then, honestly, I can't imagine any Florida State fan answering the question differently.
Well, I'm going to be different. I'm going Clemson because they play in the ACC. They've got to reestablish relativity in the ACC no matter what happens in that Florida game. They don't play in the SEC. No matter what happens in the Alabama game, they don't play in the SEC. I'm going with Clemson. Clemson's supposed to be loaded. They are the benchmark of the ACC, and that's where Florida State has to find out where it holds up, how they hold up in that conference. So I think it's more so about how they do against Clemson, and I think that would be the biggest win they could have to announce that, hey, we're back in we're gonna be a factor in the ACC. So I'll go there just to be different. And you're both probably more right than I am, but I'll go with the inside the ACC scoop. All right, got a couple.
We'll let you think you're right. Don't worry about
it. I don't know if I think I'm right. I'm just trying to add a little variety to the show, and I've got a compelling argument, I think, to do so. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about some off the field stuff. Not really off the field stuff. I don't know. Have you guys started watching Any Given Saturday on Netflix, the SEC special? And I've watched the first episode. I actually watched it last night. Brian Kelly's who I thought he was, a wine guy. He's got a great wine cellar. I don't know if y'all saw that on the first show, but I don't know who needs 200 bottles of wine. I guess he's either doing a lot of celebrating or a lot of commiserating. But I want my football coaches to be bourbon drinkers or non-drinkers. I want you to be Bear Bryant or Bobby Bowden. These wine, no wonder LSU's in the state they're in. They hired a wine guy. All right, so and you and I were talking about the first episode was a lot of Beamer. A lot of LSU, and I can't remember who the third team was that was featured in the first one. But anyway, just your thoughts on the show so far, guys. What do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? Shay?
I'll jump in there. And I'm going to say this. The hashtag, it just means more. I've covered this a couple weeks ago with Pat Fish. It annoys me. It just means more. But it couldn't be more accurate. When as a player, as a coach, and again, I've been in all four, I guess, of the major leagues at this point, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC. There's nothing like it. Riding in those environments, the way the fans treat you as you're coming in and they're hostile towards you, the game day environment, there's nothing like it. It's a religion down here in the South, and being a part of that league and taking a peek behind the scenes, it's just so unique and so different. And I feel lucky I was able to play in that league and in those environments. But it's I love it. I love watching it. And then again, it's what makes college football, and what makes it different than pro football.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's brutal conference to play in. I mean, you look at you take South Carolina. I came away most impressed with Coach Beamer. It just shows you this idea that you have to be an offensive or a defensive coordinator to be a head coach. Beamer, you look at Dabo, never coordinators, I don't believe. I think both of them were position coaches. I think to run a program, you just have to be a leader. You have to message. You have to have a purpose to what you're doing. I think Beamer is fast tracking himself to being hired away from South Carolina. And I think he's going to be one of those top coaches. He's done a phenomenal job at a program that is not easy to win in that conference. I came away impressed with him. I like Brian Kelly as a coach. I think there's things that are good and then there's things that are bad about him. But, I think LSU is one of those programs. It's about talent acquisition and they're loaded. I think they're, plus you want to talk about a senior quarterback. Florida, I think Napier, I think he's a real good guy. I don't know if you could be a good guy in that conference. I think that was Mark Richt's biggest problem. I think you basically have to sell your soul to the devil. And if you're just a nice guy in that conference, it could eat you up. And I'm not saying he can't be successful in that conference. Those other guys are killers. And I mean, there's even, you could say what you want about Dabo. Dabo has that in him. It's in his DNA deep down. And, that's the only thing I question about, what I saw from Napier. I think it's kind of one of those situations. Great guy. I think he's one of these coaches that players get along with, but does he have the DNA to win in that conference? We'll find out.
I think what's interesting. Go ahead, Pat.
I was just going to say, Napier, I think sometimes the way he comes across in press conferences, it's awkward at times. He's not as not as polished as some of these guys in the press conferences. But listen, he got some pressure off of him last year. We'll see how it goes this year. But you're right. He's probably you do have some killers in this conference, and although it's gotten a little bit nicer. I mean, Saban's gone. DeBoer seems like a nice guy. I'm sure he's a pit bull behind closed doors. But.
I'll say this about Beamer: if you hear the kids talking that special last night, the first episode I watched, NIL relationships don't matter. It's more transactional. Yeah, yes, that's true. But I'd say they matter more than ever. If that makes any sense, your ability to connect, to be genuine, to be authentic, and for kids to really feel like you care about them. And that's probably their NIL is in good shape. That's part of their success, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you look at Sellers and his family and how he they made a big impact on a kid that's a big time player. All right, trust me. If this kid has a season we expect, everybody's going to throw a lot of money at him, and South Carolina is not going to be able to compete. But listening to those parents, I think they're going to give them a chance to keep this kid in college at that program. And I still think that matters. Not every kid is about, hey, I need the money, because you know what? You still want to be comfortable. You still got to be at that school. You got to wake up every day. You got to be around people you like. If you're just doing it for the money and you're miserable, I don't know how much fun that is. Like, the money's comparable. The numbers aren't like crazy. As you hear stuff, and then the numbers aren't to the point where that should be the only reason you choose a school.
And I've lived this. I've made more money to coach some places where I wasn't as happy as I was the previous place, because it's how you feel, who you're working with, who you're doing it with every day. So I do think that there's something special about Shane. And obviously there was something special about Frank, and whether he inherited that or just learned, but there's something he's doing at a really tough place to do it, Fish, in a very negative fan base by and large, as he mentioned in episode 1. Hey, you win a game, you're on top. You lose a game, they want to fire you. But I think he's special, and it's neat to watch him build that program.
Yeah, he comes across as a really authentic guy. I thought the comment that Sellers made before there was a dinner between him and his parents. It was during last season, and before he renegotiated his NIL, it was clear that Beamer was the difference in why they got him, and he does have a chance take that program to places it's never been before because he is such a super talented kid. And I think they did lock him into a 2-year NIL deal after the offseason. So, I think I go back and forth on Shank, and sometimes he does some corny stuff, but listen, corny stuff works for college kids, right? Sometimes, they're college-age kids.
Look at Dabo's been pulling that off for 2 decades now. So, it works.
As long as you win.
Yep.
Yeah, just win. Be corny if you want. Be corny as you want to be, but you got to
row the boat.
No, don't row that boat. That boat needs to sink. No,
I still had a dagger to put in you there a little bit, man.
Listen, I watch him speak. He's kind of like the longer he's at Minnesota, the more respect I have for what he's doing there. Yeah. I do think he's a little bit odd personality-wise, but I watched him give a speech at a coaching clinic. He's pretty damn good now. When I saw him at FSU's camp a couple of years ago, and he's got his manservant carrying his bag for him. Like, come on, I know you're a college head coach, but he does some weird stuff like that. But
I'll go back to PJ Fleck. He gets hired.
That's who we're talking about.
I know. I'm going to go back and tell a PJ story here. He gets hired at Rutgers prior to my time there, but the story was he comes into the team meeting room, and there's usually a lectern or a table at the front of the room. We all stand behind to present. And I believe PJ's first action as the coordinator at Rutgers for Shiano, I guess it was. Maybe it was Kyle Flood. I think it was Greg. He jumped on top of the table, and very Ed Ogeron-ish in his first interaction with the team. That's who he is, man. I think he's always burned that way. He interviewed for us at Iowa State when I was coaching there to be our OC, and I got to know him a little bit in the interview process. But I think, PJ, kind of like Mike, those guys just vibrate at a different frequency.
Yeah, I think those two are very much alike. They're very speak it the truth type guys. Keep on preaching the message. At some point, it's going to kick in. All right, I got it. All right, we're going to play what he said, what we heard, and I really enjoyed this. And it's not a whole lot to be misunderstood, but I'm not a huge fan of this guy. I'm a fan of what he said. So, guys, bear with me. I'm going to pull up this video from Rich Rod at West Virginia from earlier this week. I want to thank David Pollock's Twitter account for this. And listen to what he said and tell me what you think.
Just not.
Did they get an extra workout?
No, like you said, two running backs made it.
Myself and the coach?
No. I'm just curious what you meant by you only had 2 running backs make it through the workout.
Yeah, without tapping out. No, they get breaks during practice. I'm not talking. Like, if we had no trainers, no medical trainers, we'd probably have 0 injuries because they had nobody to go to. We got 30 of them. So they're like, oh, where's the trainer at? And I got a great training staff. But no, what running backs finished the entire practice without tapping out somewhere? Or 2. Now, I could play a game without running backs. I can run the quarterback or slot receiver, but I don't want to. I've always had really good running backs. I got good running backs here. I got a good group. But we finished with 2. So, do you think I'm not going to talk to my recruiting staff this afternoon? We're running a business. But it helps to have some running backs.
All right, see, I love what he said on 2 fronts. I'm going to let you guys cover the recruiting front, but what he said about guys tapping out and people going to trainers, it dawned on me how soft the sport has gotten. And listen, I've heard multiple guys. I heard Blake Baker say in the SEC special that kids are softer, they're more sensitive, they're more inquisitive. There's good and bad in that, right? But it does, it reminded me that I can't remember the last practice I went to anywhere and a kid goes down and I heard a coach say, get up, quit killing the grass. Skip used to say, I would say to our kids at Florida State or South Florida, if you're hurt, get up. If you're injured, stay on the ground. Like, every little thing is an injury. Guys roll their ankles. When I played and you played, Shane, if you rolled your ankle, they expect you to get up and try to walk it off. Now they tell them to stay on the ground, and there are a ton of trainers, and we err toward the side of caution too much. I understand where Rich Rod is coming from. And then But I want to get y'all's take on that. It's very old school. It reminded me of a different time and place in college football, and I think to some extent that we need. You Shane, you mentioned on the last show, you got to get calloused up to physicality, and sometimes I don't think the way we practice today allows for that. But just your thoughts on what he said, and then Fish and Shane, what he said about recruiting, because clearly he was disappointed in the evaluation of whoever they have in that running back room by saying, I'm going back to our recruiting department and player personnel department, and we're going to have a conversation about how we ended up with who we ended up with. So I'll let you guys take it away from there.
Fish, go ahead. I'll follow.
Yeah, I just had to deal with this other day. A kid walked over to me. He's like, hey, my shoulder hurts. I'm like, dude, we haven't even put pads on. Like, I just think these kids – I remember, and I was terrible playing football, but I remember getting laid out in practice, and I thought I broke both wrists, and I was afraid to say anything to the coach. Because I knew I ran right back to the huddle. Now they called the same play, and I audibled out of it and got chewed out, but the running back got laid out on the next play. But guys are softer. Yesterday we had a guy in practice that he's like, oh, my hip hurts. I go, how? We're inside of a gym. We're not even outside. I just think that guys, they create this in their head. I do think there are still tough kids, but we as society have made kids softer, man. Just being inside all the time, the heat I know the other day it didn't even seem that hot outside, and they're like, oh, it's too hot. We got to go inside. I just think everything. I don't remember that. I remember going through 2 of these in August, and I know it's hotter out, but it's like even if the other day there was a breeze out, it seemed like they could have done practice, but I think that everybody's like, oh, we got to protect these kids. We got to protect them so something doesn't happen. I just think that's seeped into the mentality of society and the players themselves.
I think it's going back to as a kid at Florida State, you'd walk in one of those meeting rooms, and one of Coach Bowden's signs, or one of the sayings in that program, was availability is the best ability. You can't make the club in the tub. And so I think you train coaches as players, you train us as coaches. So the way you handle yourself in practice, you're tapping out, and that just builds or doesn't build trust with our relationship. So and then when he's speaking out loud in a press conference, these guys know. He knows his team's listening, right? That's a great way to talk to your team. I don't think he's talking to the recruiting staff as much. Year one, you kind of got what you got maybe, but he's probably sending a message to those kids on the team as they listen to his Twitter feed or whatever it is. Hey, you're not very tough. This is not what we're looking for, and we're going to replace that kind of effort. So I think it's honest, and it's hard. Again, most coaches do not want to be honest with kids. They just have a hard time sitting across from a kid and being honest for whatever reason. So I love when coaches are like him and tell you what they expect, what they want, and how they respond.
Rich Rod does not strike me as a guy that's ever been afraid to be honest with his players. I remember visiting with their staff back in 2006 when I was selling a technology product, and I met with Butch Jones. I didn't meet with Rich Rod, but I was around that program. We got a chance to talk with Rick Trickett. They were very serious staff. So what did you make, and this is the last question on that, what did y'all make about what he said about I'm going to go back and meet with my recruiting department or player personnel department? Anything into it, or just elaborating on the point to make an emphasis to those kids?
Yeah, I think he was speaking to the team. I don't think, that's nothing to the staff. You get there and you kind of have a roster that you're handed, and you might have some portal help nowadays, but I think, again, that's talking to his team.
Yeah. All right. One last thing. Did you guys see where the NFL Network has been purchased by ESPN, or they're going to be an ESPN property, and Red Zone is going over there? I believe Rich Eisen is going over there, and he's going to be opposite the Pat McAfee show. Listen, I don't really care. What I hope ESPN does, they're going to bring Scott Hansen over for Red Zone. What I'm afraid that show is perfect. They don't need to change it, but somebody over there is going to want to try to brand it ESPN's way. Is ESPN going to ruin the perfect Red Zone show? They're keeping Scott Hansen, which is great. I'm worried they're going to try to ESPN, make it more of an ESPN, put an ESPN spin on it. What do you guys think? And what do you think about Eisen and McAfee going opposite each other, which is, I believe, the deal? I think it's more of a generation gap thing. Rich Eisen's going to appeal to guys like me. Pat McAfee is going to appeal to the younger generation that's hitting the vape pens while they're at work like he does, and unnecessary cussing, where Rich is pretty straight-laced and straightforward and not as condescending and not as showy. What do you guys think about the transition of the NFL Network going over to ESPN and those two shows in particular?
It's your call, Pat. I mean,
conflict of interest. I guess the first thing that jumps out is, it's a conflict of interest now that there's ownership in the channel. I think they were already the hand inside the glove. ESPN was going to do nothing to hurt that brand. But conflict of interest, I don't watch Red Zone, so I can't even comment on that show.
Right.
But I'm sure, like any company, ESPN will put their stamp on it like everybody wants to. There's egos involved, and somebody wants to put a stamp on it. I agree.
All right. Well, let's first of all, we want to thank Fish. I know he's got an appointment here in about 20 minutes. So, Fish, we want to thank you for coming on, sharing your thoughts on Miami, Florida State, recruiting in general. And we hope to have you back. Let us, you're welcome anytime. We love getting your insights. And at some point, you and I will have a disagreement and make it more entertaining for people. But
we didn't kill each other today, which is like that. It's like the first step of marriage counseling.
That's right. That's right.
Is that why you put me in the middle? Is that why?
You are separating us. But listen, some of our conversations in the past they like Osceola, the Seminole sidelines people loved it.
Hey, listen, I brought up PJ. I didn't bring up the other sore spot, Mr. Fisher, but other than that, we're good. So.
I'm better with Jimbo now.
I'm about to say, I did not know you had a sore spot. I always thought it was a positive. I didn't know.
We almost went to blows over Jimbo once, but other than that, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. All right, so Fish, we appreciate it. We also want to take time to appreciate our sponsors one more time. The Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast is brought to you by Ascension Sports, where elite athletes rise above the noise. Whether you're navigating NIL deals, building your personal brand, and preparing for the next level, Ascension Sports provides tailored consulting to help maximize every opportunity on and off the field, from recruiting insight to pre-draft prep and everything in between. Learn more at AscensionSportsConsulting.com. Again, AscensionSportsConsulting.com. Shane is president of the football operation there, and they do represent basketball and I believe baseball players too. So if you're a prospect or a parent of a prospect, or you got a kid that's looking to transfer at some point, Ascension Sports deals in the portal and NIL space. Shane, where can they reach you again?
Shane Burnham 52, and you don't got to be in a portal. That we represent guys at their institution, not trying to leave as well.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, he can renegotiate for you where you're at. All right. So we also want to thank Scott and Todd Harrell at Home Instead of Tallahassee. At Home Instead, our adaptable care plans give you the confidence of personalized help that's with you throughout your day, even though we know there are plenty of things you still want to fly solo on, like finishing your daily Sudoku, trying Aqua Zumba, or watching baseball, or just generally hogging the remote. We'll provide companionship when you need it and space when you don't, all with a smile from qualified, compassionate caregivers matched to you. Visit Homeinstead online, homeinstead.com online, homeinsteadtally.com, homeinsteadtally.com. Thank you to Scott and Todd for their sponsorship. We also want to thank Dan Mowry of the Mowry Law Firm. Dan is a former kicker at Florida State and former teammate of mine at Lincoln High School. Mowry Law specializes in car and truck accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death cases. Dan's team of lawyers bring over 50 years of experience with them, and they can be reached at 904-824-7799 or MowryLaw.com. They are based out of St. Augustine, Florida, so we want to thank Ascension Sports, Home Instead of Tallahassee, and Mowry Law Firm for their sponsorship of the Burnham Brothers Podcast. I want to thank Fish again for coming on the show. Fish and I have worked together for a long time, and we hope to have him back on. Shane, any parting words for our viewers and listeners?
Happy Hump Day.
Yeah, happy Hump Day. And Shane, I really hope for your sake you figure all this pre-show stuff out. It's entertaining to watch you in the background, but you're scrambling for time now because you were 30 minutes late.
The struggle is real.
The struggle is real. All right. Hey, we want to thank you for watching the show. We want you to ask you, if you're watching, to please go subscribe to the Burnham Brothers Podcast YouTube channel. We'd certainly appreciate it if you would do that, and obviously hit the like button and sign up for notifications so that you know when we're doing one of these shows live or taped. But please go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. We certainly appreciate that. And we will see you on Friday for the next edition of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. Have a great Wednesday and have a great Thursday, and we'll see you soon.